The city was still waking when the first light slipped between glass towers, brushing against rows of silent cars parked beside a gleaming corporate plaza. Steam rose from the pavement after an early drizzle, catching the faint hum of morning traffic. Among the reflections of expensive suits and rushing shoes, a thin figure crouched beside a black sedan, her hands raw from soap and cold water. Her faded sweater clung to her shoulders. Beside her lay a small tin cup, half filled with coins that barely made a sound when another dropped in. "Almost done, sir," she whispered, voice trembling more from fear than chill. No one heard. "Before we dive deeper, tell me, where are you watching from? It still amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city in the comments. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads." The girl's name was Lila, 21, though her weary eyes carried the weight of 40. She had been sleeping in an abandoned bus shelter for weeks, washing cars for coins to afford bread and instant noodles. Her dream was simple: one warm meal a day and a place to charge her old phone so she could search for work again. That morning, the plaza belonged to power. Men in pressed suits, women in heels that clicked like metronomes of ambition. And in the middle of it all, Lila, barefoot, invisible, scrubbing away the city's dust from a car that looked too perfect for her to touch. She didn't know that car belonged to Ethan Cross, CEO of Crosswell Industries, one of the most feared and admired names in the city. Ethan was the kind of man who didn't slow down, not for rain, not for red lights, not for people. When he stepped out of the lobby that morning, Bluetooth in his ear, coffee in one hand, he almost tripped over the bucket beside his car. His eyes snapped down, irritation flashing before curiosity. "What are you doing?" His voice cut through the morning air like cold glass. Lila jumped back, clutching the rag. "Yes, sir. I was just washing your car. I didn't scratch anything, I promise." He frowned. "Who told you to? Do you work here?" She shook her head. "No, sir. I clean cars sometimes. People give me a few coins." Ethan exhaled sharply, his impatience barely hidden. "You shouldn't be here. This is private property." Her lips quivered. "I'll leave right away, sir. I didn't mean." But before she could finish, a security guard approached, ready to escort her out. Ethan waved him off for reasons even he didn't fully understand. Maybe it was the way her voice cracked, or maybe the faint glint of silver at her wrist, a delicate bracelet, clearly expensive, glimmering beneath layers of date. He noticed it when she reached to grab her rag. "Where did you get that?" he asked sharply. Lila froze. Her instinct told her to cover it, but it was too late. The sunlight caught its engraving, small, almost faded letters. "To my little star, Dad." It was my father's," she said softly. Ethan's jaw tightened. Something about that inscription pulled at a memory he couldn't place. Still, his voice remained hard. "That bracelet doesn't belong to a girl washing cars for coins." Her eyes filled but didn't fall. "It's all I have left of him." For a brief moment, the world seemed quieter, the city hum fading into the space between their breaths. Ethan looked at her, then at the car's spotless surface, and for the first time that morning, felt something stir, discomfort, maybe shame, maybe something older. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. He turned away, muttering, "Get something to eat," and tossed a folded note into her tin. Not coins this time, but a bill. He didn't wait for thanks, but he heard her whisper one anyway, soft as prayer. Lila watched him drive off, her hands trembling as she unfolded the money. It was enough for a warm meal, maybe two. For a second, she felt seen, and that frightened her more than hunger ever had. As she packed up, a young woman from the cafe nearby approached, holding a leftover sandwich. "You can have this if you want," she said kindly. Lila smiled shyly. "Thank you. I'll save it for later." The girl hesitated. "You know, there's a shelter downtown hiring part-time cleaners. They feed you too." Her heart skipped. "Really?" "Yeah. Tell them Clara sent you." That night, as she lay in the shelter bed, the bracelet warm against her wrist, she whispered into the dark, "Maybe tomorrow will be better." But tomorrow held something she couldn't imagine, a truth that would change everything Ethan Cross thought he knew about his own past. The next morning, rain drizzled lightly against the shelter's cracked windows. Lila sat up slowly, clutching her bracelet as if it were her pulse. The memory of the CEO's voice still lingered in her mind, sharp yet oddly human underneath. She remembered the folded bill, the glint in his eyes when he saw the bracelet, and how for a fleeting second he'd looked less like a man in charge and more like someone remembering something painful. She dressed in the same faded sweater, tucked her wet hair into a ponytail, and set off toward the cafe. Clara had promised to talk to the shelter manager about the cleaning job. When she arrived, Clara waved her in. "You showed up. I didn't think you'd come so early." "I don't like wasting time," Lila replied, smiling faintly. Inside, the small shelter office buzzed with quiet kindness. An older woman named Grace handed her a clipboard. "We can pay weekly," Grace said. "It's not much, but you'll have food and a bed. We just need someone who works hard." "I can do that," Lila said, her voice firmer than before. That afternoon, she scrubbed floors, folded sheets, and served soup with a grateful heart. For the first time in months, the scent of soap didn't remind her of survival. It smelled like purpose. She hummed softly while cleaning, unaware that outside, fate was quietly tightening the threads that tied her life to Ethan's once more. In his high-rise office, Ethan Cross was not himself. His assistant, Michael, noticed. "Sir, you've been staring at that report for 10 minutes. Ethan blinked back to focus. "I'm fine," he lied, but he wasn't. He couldn't shake the image of that girl, the tremble in her voice, the bracelet glinting under morning light. Something about the engraving had stirred an ache he'd buried long ago. That night, he opened an old drawer in his penthouse, one he hadn't touched in years. Inside lay a photograph, a woman with soft brown eyes and a little girl in her arms, both smiling. The child wore that same silver bracelet. His breath caught. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." He turned the photo over. A name scribbled in fading ink, Isabella and Lila. The next day, Ethan visited the same plaza, pretending to inspect his car, but really searching for her. The street was busy, alive with noise, but she wasn't there. He waited in his car longer than he cared to admit, before driving off to the cafe, hoping for a clue. Clara recognized him instantly, the man from yesterday's car. "You're the CO, right?" Ethan nodded. "The girl who was washing my car, do you know her?" Clara's eyes narrowed slightly. "Lila? Why?" He hesitated. "I think I might know her family. She's at the shelter 2 blocks down. Ask for Grace." He thanked her and drove off, heart pounding like it hadn't in years. Inside the shelter, Grace was surprised to see a man like him standing in the doorway, rain on his shoulders, expensive shoes wet. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for a girl named Lila," Ethan said, voice measured but tight. Grace frowned. "She's on shift, cleaning the dorms." Ethan followed her down a hallway lined with bunk beds and soft murmurs of tired souls. When Lila turned and saw him standing there, her hand froze around the mop handle. "You again," she whispered. "I need to talk to you," Ethan said softly. The room went quiet, only the rain tapping faintly against the windows. Lila's throat tightened. "If it's about yesterday, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bother." "It's not about that." He took a slow breath. "It's about your bracelet." She looked down at it, heart racing. "What about it? Where did you get it, really?" She hesitated, tears forming. "My father gave it to me before he died. He said it would keep me safe." Ethan's face paled. "What was your father's name?" Her voice broke. "Daniel Cross." The mop clattered to the floor. Ethan stumbled a step back as if the ground had shifted beneath him. His throat tightened around a name he hadn't spoken in years. "Daniel was my brother," he whispered. Lila blinked, confusion and disbelief twisting through her. "That's not possible. My father said he had no family left." Ethan shook his head slowly, eyes glassy. We lost touch after an accident. He blamed me for our parents' death. We never spoke again." Lila's knees weakened. "Daniel, my uncle." He nodded, emotion trembling at the edge of his voice. "Yes, and I had no idea you were alive." She covered her face, overwhelmed, sobbing quietly into her palms. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Right, yes, and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. Ethan gently stepped forward. You don't have to live like this anymore. Come with me. Please. Lila's sob softened. She wanted to believe him, wanted it desperately, but years of loneliness had built walls around her trust. I don't know, she whispered. People always say things they don't mean. He knelt before her, voice low and broken. Then let me prove I do. And as thunder rolled outside, the man who once lived above the clouds found himself kneeling in the date, begging for a chance to make right what life had stolen. The rain hadn't stopped that night. It painted the city in silver streaks, each drop echoing softly through the shelter windows where Lila now sat beside Ethan. Between them, the bracelet gleamed faintly in the lamplight, the last piece of a story neither fully understood. Ethan's coat was draped around her shoulders. He had insisted she keep it when he saw her shivering. They hadn't spoken for several minutes. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, full of things neither dared to say. Tell me, Lila finally whispered, eyes fixed on the floor. Why didn't you ever come for us? Ethan's jaw tightened. He stared at his clasped hands, remembering the years that had blurred into a haze of guilt and business deals. I didn't know you existed, Lila. Your father never told me he had a child. She turned to him, disbelief flickering. He talked about his brother sometimes, but never by name. Only that you were gone, that something broke between you. Ethan sighed deeply, his voice cracking under the weight of old regret. It did. After our parents died, Daniel blamed me for the accident. We were driving back from a meeting I had arranged. The brakes failed on a mountain road. I survived. They didn't. He couldn't forgive me. Lila's hands trembled. So he left everything behind. Even you. Yes, Ethan said softly. And I let him. I thought giving him space was kindness. But space turned into silence. And silence, he paused, his voice barely above a whisper, became years. Lila swallowed hard, fighting tears. The pain in his voice didn't feel corporate or distant anymore. It was human. The shelter's lights flickered, and Grace quietly slipped out, leaving them alone. Lila traced the bracelet's engraving with her thumb, her voice barely steady. He gave me this before he got sick. He said it was from someone who once loved him daily. I never knew it was you. Ethan's eyes softened. Your father was brilliant, stubborn, and kind. He taught me everything before he turned away. I wanted to find him for years, but when I finally did, he'd vanished. No records, no address, just gone. Her voice cracked. He was running. From debt, from guilt. We moved every few months. I remember hiding under tables when landlords came knocking. He kept saying, Don't worry, Lily, the stars still see us. That's why he called me his little star. The words hit Ethan's chest like a blow. He looked down at the bracelet again. To my little star, Dad. It wasn't just jewelry. It was the last heartbeat of a promise. He leaned forward. Lila, you don't have to struggle anymore. Come live with me. Let me help you. But she shook her head gently, eyes glistening. You can't fix years with a mansion and a car, Ethan. You can't buy the nights I slept hungry. He flinched, nodding. I know. I want to try. Days passed. Ethan visited often, bringing food, blankets, and books. The other resident began to whisper, Who was this rich man sitting on the shelter floor, talking to a homeless girl as if she were family? Lila tried to keep her distance, but slowly she started to smile again. He listened to her stories. The time she sold handmade cards in the park, the stray cat she named Hope, the teachers who looked the other way when she couldn't afford books. For every story she shared, Ethan gave one back. The boardrooms, the loneliness that followed success, the quiet ache of winning everything except peace. One evening, as the sky turned rose and gold, Ethan handed her an envelope. It's a letter your father wrote years ago, he said. I found it in an old file at home. He must have sent it, but it never reached me. Her fingers shook as she opened it. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. If you ever read this, Ethan, I forgive you. I just can't face you yet. I'm tired, brother. I've made too many mistakes. If something happens to me and you find my Lily, tell her father never stopped loving her. She's my light, even in the dark." Lila's tears fell silently onto the paper. Ethan looked away, his own eyes red. He whispered, "I failed him, and you—" She shook her head, voice breaking. "No, you're here now. That's enough. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." Ethan smiled faintly, wiping his eyes. "You sound like your father." She smiled through tears. Maybe he is still here, in both of us. That night, Lila stepped outside, watching the stars peek through the city haze. For the first time, she didn't feel small beneath them. She felt seen, not by pity, but by fate finally making its way home. And in that fragile silence, something like healing began. Morning sunlight spilled gently across the city, painting the concrete with warmth. Lila stood outside the shelter, her hair tied back neatly, the borrowed coat folded over her arm. Ethan's car waited by the curb, but she hesitated before stepping in. She'd spent half the night staring at her father's letter, each line pressing into her heart like a promise she hadn't known she'd been waiting for. Ethan wanted to help her. He'd said it again and again, but trust was a fragile thing, and hairs had been broken too many times to rebuild overnight. Ethan stepped out, his usual confidence softened by humility. "You don't have to come if you're not ready," he said quietly. "But I meant what I said. I want to give you a home. Not out of guilt, out of family." Lila's eyes shimmered. "I'm not used to being anyone's family anymore." He smiled sadly. "Then let's start as strangers who share the same blood." Something in his tone, gentle, patient, melted her resistance. She nodded and slipped into the passenger seat. The ride to Ethan's house felt unreal. The city blurred past, tall towers, busy streets, people she once thought belonged to another world. Now, somehow, she was entering it. When they arrived, she stared up at the towering glass building that overlooked the river. "This is where you live?" she asked softly. "For now," Ethan said, unlocking the door. "But maybe someday you'll call it home too." Inside, the penthouse was silent except for the soft hum of the city below. Lila's eyes widened at the gleaming marble floors, the wall-length windows, the grand piano collecting sunlight in the corner. She whispered, "It's beautiful and lonely." Ethan's throat tightened. "You're right. It's been both for a long time." He guided her through the rooms, showing her a small guest suite with soft cream sheets and a window overlooking the skyline. Lila ran her fingers over the fabric. Clean, warm, safe. For a girl who had slept on bus stops and shelter cots, it felt almost unreal. "Are you sure I should stay here?" she asked hesitantly. "I'm sure," he said. "And I've already arranged for you to start classes if you want. Or work at the foundation. Whatever you choose." Her lips parted in disbelief. "You'd really do that for me?" Ethan smiled. "Your father would have wanted it. And so do I." That evening, she stood on the balcony watching the sunset over the water. Ethan joined her, 2 mugs of tea in hand. "He used to take me to watch sunsets," she said. "He said they were proof that endings could still be beautiful." Ethan looked out at the horizon, his jaw trembling. He was right. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was full of warmth, like a bridge built from sorrow and understanding. Then, suddenly, a voice echoed from behind them. "Mr. Cross, sorry to interrupt." It was Michael, his assistant, holding a folder. "The press is asking about your new guest. Someone saw you at the shelter." Lila's heart sank. "They know?" Ethan turned sharply. "Tell them she's family. That's all they need to know." Michael hesitated, lowering his voice. "Sir, you know what this could do to the company's image." Ethan's reply was steady. "Then maybe the company needs a better image." Lila blinked, speechless. No one had ever defended her like that before. When Michael left, she looked at Ethan, tears brimming. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," he said simply. "The world needs to see you for who you are, not where you came from." Later that night, Lila sat at the piano, pressing a hesitant key. The note lingered, trembling in the stillness. Ethan watched from the doorway. "You play?" he asked. "My dad taught me a little. He said music was just another way to breathe when the world got too heavy." Ethan smiled faintly. "He taught me the same thing. Guess we both forgot to breathe for a while." She looked up at him, soft laughter mixing with tears. "Maybe we can learn again." He nodded. Together. For the first time in years, the penthouse wasn't just echoing, it was alive. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. As the last note faded, Lila whispered, "Maybe the stars aren't so far away anymore." And Ethan, looking at her, his brother's daughter, his unexpected redemption, thought maybe neither were forgiveness. Outside, the city glimmered like consolation stitched close enough to touch. But fate, gentle as it seemed, wasn't done with them yet. The morning after felt lighter. Lila woke to sunlight streaming through soft curtains, the smell of fresh coffee drifting in from the kitchen. For the first time in years, she hadn't woken to noise or fear, just quiet. She touched the bracelet on her wrist, a gentle reminder where she'd come from and where she was now. Ethan was already seated at the counter, reading the paper. He looked up as she entered. "Morning, kiddo," he said with a smile that tried to hide how new the word felt on his tongue. She smiled back shyly. "Morning." He gestured to a plate of toast and fruit. "Eat. We've got a busy day ahead. I thought you might come with me to the office. You should see what your father helped me start all those years ago." Her eyes brightened. "He helped you build the company." Ethan nodded slowly. In the early days, he was a creative one, always had ideas that made impossible things work. I was a planner. Together, we made a good team, until it fell apart. She didn't push further. The pain in his tone was answer enough. At the Crosswell headquarters, people stared when Lila walked in beside Ethan. Her clothes were simple but clean, her eyes unsure yet brave. Ethan's presence was commanding, but the way he slowed his stride for her told everyone this wasn't charity. It was family. They reached his office, floor-to-ceiling glass, trophies, awards, and an old photo of Ethan and Daniel from years ago. Lila's eyes lingered on it. "You look happy there," she said softly. "We were," Ethan replied, before life started measuring worth in numbers instead of hearts. Just then, Michael stepped in, holding a report. His tone was uneasy. "Sir, there's something you need to see." He hesitated before laying down a folder marked confidential. "It's about the accident that killed your parents." Ethan froze. "What about it?" Michael swallowed. "A journalist found old insurance records. They suggest the car's brakes didn't just fail, they were tampered with." Lila's breath hitched. "Tampered?" Ethan's mind reeled. "That's not possible. We were told it was a mechanical failure." "I'm sorry, sir," Michael said. "The mechanic who handled the repairs disappeared shortly after, and there's a payment trail leading back to an anonymous account, one connected to the early Crosswell Fund transfers." Ethan's heart sank. He turned pale, gripping the desk edge. Lila frowned, confused. "What does that mean?" He looked up, eyes dark with realization. "It means someone from my own company might have killed them." The room fell silent. The hum of the city outside felt distant, unreal. That night, Ethan sat alone in his study, files spread across the table. His memories twisted like smoke, his parents' laughter, Daniel's anger, the screech of metal, the fire. For decades he had believed guilt was his burden to bear, but now there was something worse than guilt, doubt. Lila entered quietly, her hair damp from a shower, wrapped in one of his sister's old sweaters Grace had found for her. "You haven't eaten," she said softly. He didn't look up. "There's something you should know. Your father, he may have died hating me for something I didn't do." She stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "And if he were here now, he'd see you trying to make things right." Ethan's voice broke. "I just wish he could have known that." Lila's touch was light, but steady. "Then do what he couldn't. Forgive yourself." Her words pierced through the fog, fragile but true. "Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply." Ethan finally exhaled, leaning back. "I don't know if I can. But maybe you're right. Maybe that's where it begins." The next day, Ethan made a decision. He called a meeting with his legal team and ordered a full investigation into the company's early days. "I don't care what it costs," he told them. "If there's truth buried in this company's foundation, dig until you find it." Lila watched him from the doorway. The same man who once dismissed her now fighting ghost he'd long tried to forget. That evening, as they drove home, she said quietly, "You know, my dad always said, the truth hurts less than the lies we live with. Maybe that's what this is, your truth finally catching up." Ethan nodded. "Then it's about time I stopped running." They fell silent as the city lights passed, reflections shimmering against the car windows, two souls carrying scars that finally began to heal under weight of shared truth. Weeks passed like whispers. The investigation unfolded quietly, reaching deeper into the company's past than anyone had dared to before. Every new file, every faded signature seemed to carry ghosts. Ethan had stopped sleeping properly. His nights were spent under the glow of the desk lamp, surrounded by memories that wouldn't let him rest. Lila often found him there, shoulders tense, eyes rimmed red. She'd bring him tea, set it beside the mountain of papers, and sit in silence, because sometimes silence said more than words ever could. One evening, the phone rang. Ethan answered, voice low. "Yes, this is Cross." The voice on the other end was strained. "Sir, we traced the payment trail. It wasn't from an anonymous donor. The account was opened under Daniel Cross's name." Ethan went still. His knuckles whitened around the receiver. "That's not possible. My brother wouldn't." "There's more," the investigator said carefully. "The car was insured heavily 2 days before the accident. If he had survived, he would have inherited everything. But the paperwork wasn't processed because he withdrew the claim before he disappeared." The line went quiet. Ethan's breath came unsteady. "So you're saying Daniel might have caused the crash?" "There's no definitive proof," the voice replied, "but the record suggests he was desperate, drowning in debt." When the call ended, the room was too quiet. Lila stood by the doorway, her expression pale. "I heard." Ethan turned slowly, grief and disbelief warring in his eyes. "It doesn't make sense. He wasn't capable of something like that. He loved our parents." "But you said he was drowning," she whispered. "Desperation changes people." He sank into the chair, his voice breaking. "He wasn't a murderer, Lila. He was my brother." That night, Lila walked the balcony alone, her heart heavy with the weight of 2 truths. The father she adored might have caused the accident that destroyed her uncle's life, and the uncle who saved her was now paying for sins he never committed. She looked up at the stars. "Dad," she murmured, "what really happened?" Ethan joined her quietly. "He loved you," he said. "Whatever the truth is, never doubt that." She turned to him, tears glistening. "Then why did he keep running?" Ethan hesitated, then pulled out a small folder he'd kept hidden. "Because of this." Inside were old letters, never sent, yellowed at the edges. They were from Daniel, written years ago but never mailed. The first few were angry, full of blame. But the last one was different. "Ethan, I can't undo what I did. The money, the lies, the pain. I thought I could fix things, but I only made them worse. If you find this, forgive me. I didn't mean for them to die. I only meant to scare you, to make you stop expanding, to make you listen. I cut the brakes. I thought you'd cancel the trip. I was wrong." Lila's knees buckled. Ethan caught her before she fell. "No," she whispered, voice trembling. "No, he wouldn't." Tears streamed down her face. "He just wanted to protect me. He said he was trying to save us." Ethan's voice was hollow. "He was trying to save me too, but he lost himself instead." They stood there, uncle and niece, broken by the truth, bound by forgiveness neither of them fully knew how to give. The following morning, Ethan walked into his office and gathered his team. "My brother Daniel Cross was part of this company once. He made mistakes, and so did I. But the truth doesn't need to hide in shadows anymore. If this company stands for integrity, then it begins today with honesty." Reporters caught wind of the confession. Headlines spread fast. CEO admits family scandal, seeks redemption through transparency. But Ethan didn't care. For the first time in decades, he felt free. At home, Lila waited with trembling hands, unsure what to say when he returned. When he finally did, he looked exhausted yet lighter, like a man who had laid down a mountain he'd carried too long. He handed her a folded letter. "Your father's last words deserve to be yours, not the world's." She unfolded it, reading through tears. "My Lily, if you're reading this, I failed you in many ways. But I never stopped watching over you. The stars you love, they're the same ones your uncle sees. When you find him, forgive him, and forgive me too." Her sobs were soft, but the forgiveness that poured through them was real. If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. Ethan wrapped his arms around her, and together they watched the city fade into twilight. Two souls learning that truth, no matter how painful, can still lead to peace. But the world outside wasn't done testing their new beginning. Sometimes, when you rise from ashes, the wind tries to pull you back down. The storm came not from the sky this time, but from screens. By morning, every news outlet had splashed the story across their front pages. CEO's homeless niece linked to fatal family secret. Cameras lined the street outside Ethan's building, reporters crowding the sidewalks like a restless tide. Lila stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself, watching strangers turn her pain into headlines. Her face, her father's name, her bracelet, all now public property. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "I just wanted to live quietly." Ethan stood behind her, jaw clenched. "You shouldn't have to hide. You did nothing wrong." "But they don't care," she said, turning to him, tears threatening to fall. "They'll call me a liar. They'll say I'm pretending. They'll twist everything." He wanted to promise her it would stop, but he knew how cool the world could be to the innocent. Instead, he placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then let me take the noise. You've carried enough." That afternoon, Ethan held a press conference. The board begged him not to. "Let it fade," they urged. "Scandals die faster if you stay silent." But Ethan had lived in silence long enough. Standing at the podium, he looked out at the flashing lights and raised microphones. "My name is Ethan Cross," he began, voice firm but steady. "4 years, I've been called successful, powerful, but behind every title, there was guilt and truth long buried. My brother made a terrible mistake, one that cost us everything. His daughter, Lila, had no part in that. She is not my shame. She is my redemption." The crowd murmured. Some leaned forward. Others frowned. He continued, his voice breaking slightly. "You write stories for a living. So write this one right. Write about a girl who lost everything but never stopped being kind. Write about how she washed a stranger's car, not knowing it would lead her back to family. And if you must write about me, then write about a man finally brave enough to love what the world told him to hide." There was silence, just a soft clicking of cameras. For a brief moment, even the press seemed unsure whether to ask questions or simply listen. Lila watched the live broadcast from a penthouse, tears falling freely. Ethan's voice carried through the room, softer now, almost trembling. He ended with, "My family's mistakes made headlines, but maybe our forgiveness can too." When the screen went dark, she stood still for a long time before whispering, "He did it for me." That evening, Ethan returned home to find her waiting by the door. Her eyes were swollen but shining. She didn't speak. She just hugged him so tightly that it startled him. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest, "for choosing truth over pride." He smiled faintly, resting his chin on her hair. "For choosing you over fear." The next few days brought chaos and calm in waves. Some praised Ethan's honesty, others called it foolish. Investors wavered, but employees stood by him, many sending messages that began with "Thank you for reminding us that humanity still matters." Meanwhile, strangers began sending letters addressed to Lila, hundreds of them. Some told their own stories of loss and forgiveness. Some sent coins, saying, "You helped us remember kindness." She sat by the fire one night, reading them aloud. A woman from India wrote that she forgave her brother after watching your speech, she told Ethan. A man in Brazil said your story made him call his mother after 20 years. Ethan smiled softly. Then maybe the pain wasn't wasted after all. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight. Lila folded the letter carefully, her expression thoughtful. You know, Uncle Ethan, she said, maybe we could start something, like a fund for people who want to rebuild their lives, like I did. Shelter, education, second chances. Ethan looked at her, pride glimmering behind tired eyes. We'll call it the Little Star Foundation. She laughed softly, tears returning. After what Dad used to call me. After what he still does, Ethan said, looking up toward the faint stars over the city. Some lights never go out, Lila. They just wait to be found again. Outside, the air was cool, peaceful. For the first time in years, the Cross family name wasn't just tied to tragedy. It was tied to change. And as Lila stood on that balcony where the story had begun, she finally understood what her father had meant about endings being beautiful. But before the dawn of peace, there was one more shadow waiting. A visitor neither expected, carrying a letter that would reopen wounds they thought had healed. 3 weeks later, dawn broke quietly over the river. The city moved on, as cities do. But inside Ethan's home, time had slowed to something gentler. Lila was pouring tea when the doorbell rang. Ethan looked up from his laptop, expecting someone. She shook her head. No. He opened the door and froze. A man in his 60s stood there, coat wet from rain, holding a worn envelope. His face carried years of secrets, and his eyes, gray, steady, regretful, were eyes Ethan remembered from long ago. Do I know you? Ethan asked cautiously. The man nodded slowly. Name's Robert Hale. I was a mechanic, the one who worked on your family's car. The air went still. Lila came closer, her heart thudding. You mean the car from the accident? Robert nodded again, holding out the envelope. This belonged to your father. He left it with me before he disappeared, said to deliver it if the truth ever surfaced. Ethan's hands trembled as he took the letter. His name was scrawled on the front, faded, smudged, unmistakable. He hesitated, then unfolded it. Ethan, if you're reading this, it means the truth caught up. I was wrong. I never meant to hurt anyone. I was angry, blind. I thought you'd taken everything from me, but it was my pride that did it. When I saw you succeed, I saw my failure staring back. I wanted to stop you, not destroy you. I tampered with the brakes, thinking it would scare you, but it took them instead. I couldn't live with it. I ran because I didn't deserve to stay. But my Lily, she deserves a life I couldn't give her. Don't hate me. Just make her proud. Ethan's voice cracked as he read aloud. When he reached the last line, he couldn't continue. Lila took the letter gently, her tears falling onto the page. He wasn't evil, she whispered. He was broken. Ethan wiped his eyes. We all were. The old mechanic shifted uncomfortably. He asked me to tell you both one thing. The worst mistake a man can make isn't falling. It's refusing to stand again. He said that before he died. Lila pressed a hand over her heart, whispering, He died trying to protect me. Ethan looked at the man, gratitude mixing with sorrow. Thank you for coming. You gave us what we needed, closure. Robert nodded, eyes glistening. He loved you both. Don't forget that. That night, the house was quiet again. Rain tapped gently against the windows as Lila sat at the piano, the letter resting beside her. Ethan stood near the window, staring at the skyline. He finally told the truth. He murmured, And you forgave him, she said softly. Ethan turned to her, his eyes tired but warm. Forgiveness isn't something you give for others, Lila. It's something you give to yourself, so the past stops owning you. Lila nodded, playing a few slow notes. Then maybe it's time we live for the future. He smiled. Your father would like that. She looked up at him, eyes bright through tears. And I think he'd like what we're doing too, the Little Star Foundation. We already have donors. People who believe in second chances. Ethan laughed softly, a sound that carried relief. You're building something bigger than this family ever could. She tilted her head. No, we're building it. Together. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, I felt you. Months later, the foundation opened its doors, a bright, humble building near the same street where Lila once washed cars. Children laughed in the courtyard. A mural painted on the wall showed a small girl reaching for the stars. During the opening ceremony, Lila stood before the crowd, wearing a simple dress and her father's bracelet. Ethan stood beside her, proud, his arm around her shoulders. When I was lost, she began, voice trembling but strong, a stranger gave me a chance. I didn't know he was family. I didn't know he was carrying guilt for something that wasn't his to carry. But he showed me that kindness can rebuild what life destroys. This place, the Little Star Foundation, is proof that pain can be turned into purpose. The crowd erupted in applause. Ethan looked at her through tears, whispering, You did it, Lily. She smiled. We did it. As the applause faded, Lila lifted her face toward the sky. Dad, she whispered under her breath, I kept your promise. I'm your little star, and I finally found my way home. The sun dipped behind the skyline, painting gold across the walls. Ethan stood beside her, and for the first time, the world felt quiet, not empty, but whole. The bracelet caught one last shimmer of light, reflecting it outward, a symbol of pain turned to peace, loss turned to love, and endings that were never really endings at all.